Simone! Today we are going to be talking about one of those controversial topics that I just walked into by accident.
Oh, no.
We were on another episode, and I was like, well, no Arab country has a stable democracy or ever has. And I just threw this out there because I was like, just in my head, when I thought about it, I was like, yeah, I can't think of any Arab majority country that has a stable democracy. And then I rewatched myself saying that, and I was like, wait, that cannot conceivably be true. There are 22 Arab majority countries. The region is one of the oldest, in terms of civilization in human history.
Yeah.
Has there literally never been a single democracy in this region that lasted more than one human lifetime? And the answer is no, there really hasn't been.
No.
The longest democracy ever within this region was Lebanon, and it lasted for a period of 32 years.
30. Oh my God.
Not even, and that was the longest. The next longest was 11 years for Tunisia. Other than that, not a single country has had a democracy last more than 10 years. And keep in mind, this isn't like there are 22 countries in this region. Now, to understand how absolutely effing insane this is, let's contrast this with Northern European countries, right?
Okay.
You can say,
Yeah.
okay, how weird is it really for countries that are Arab majority to never have had democracy? If you look at the 14 Northern European countries in the world today, all over the world, not a single one of them is in a democracy.
Oh God.
Like, this is one of these things where you got to be like, this is not like random odds or something like that. This is not like, oh, we rolled the dice and we just, weren't sure or something like that. So you could now say, okay, Malcolm, I know what you're getting at. This is some sort of a Muslim thing. And I'm going to say, actually, no. The majority of non-Arab majority Muslim countries, 35 out of the 40 total non-Arab majority Muslim countries, are democracies.
No way. Whoa. Okay. Yeah, because I mean, like 90% of Arabs are Muslims, but then not all Muslims, actually, maybe not even a majority of Muslims. No, most Muslims are not Arab. So
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes
sense. They might be semi-democratic systems, but like if you're talking even full democracies, it's still the majority of them that are democracies, which makes it even crazier that the Arab majority countries haven't had a single period of democracy in their entire history. And then you can say, you go to AI about this, and because I've tried to like talk this through with AI.
Okay.
And it gives me like terrible answers to start, right? Like at first it was like what? Of course, colonialism caused this.
No.
And I'm like, bro, first of all, the majority of Latin America now, which was all colonized, is democracies at this point. All over East Asia, there are heavily colonized areas that are democracies. There are areas of Africa that far worse things happened to the Arab countries in terms of colonialization.
Yeah.
They're democracies. I actually got curious about this point and decided to look into it. And of the 14 never colonized countries, 7 are democracies and 7 are not. Of the countries that were at some point in their history colonized, 43.8% are democracies. So the probability that you're going to be a democracy does not appear to be considerably impacted by whether or not you were colonized. That's not the answer, okay? And the AI then said, well, it's war. There's just so much war in that region. And I said, excuse me, Europe went through 2 world wars, which was much heavier conflict over a much, more condensed time period, but still like extended, like the war was the 2 world wars.
Mm-hmm.
And most of its democratic institutions stayed intact.
Yeah.
So it's not Muslim. It's not Islam. It's not colonialism.
Yeah.
It's not instability.
Right.
And then it comes to me and it goes, well, it's Dutch disease. So for people who don't know Dutch disease,
I don't know what this is
when you have too much wealth from a single income source like oil,
Mm-hmm.
and that leads to consolidation of power, and it makes it more likely that you're going to have a like
Oh, but not all Arab countries are super wealthy.
yeah, I was like, okay, but two
And then
problems.
what about the Nordic countries that are super wealthy and are
Yeah,
also
Dutch disease is
super
named after the Dutch, and they're not an
Yeah.
autocracy.
What?
So there have been plenty
No.
of instances of countries with Dutch disease not becoming autocracies, and there are plenty of Arab countries that don't have Dutch disease. So
Yeah.
that's clearly not an explanation either. And
Okay.
this, I just need to like audience. If you're like bad with like statistics or coin flips or something like that, and you're just like, oh, it's a weird coincidence. No, this isn't a weird coincidence. This demands explanation. You can't have a coin flip 22 times over millennia, or let's just say democracy is being popular is new, over centuries, never land democracy. You can't have that. All right. And note here, people can be like, well, you know, there weren't that many democracies historically. And I'm like, actually, there are a lot of democracies historically. You can go back to the ancient Greeks. You can go back to other weird semi-democratic systems you had throughout Europe at various periods, or in small like islands over various periods. I think Malta was a democracy at one point. But anyways, something. There's various countries that have been democracies at some point. Those don't exist anywhere in Arab history. So this brings us to questions that are difficult.
Okay. Yeah.
The first is, could it be genetic? So the question here is, do we know of some species that order themselves differently based on within the same species based on minor genetic differences? And it's like, actually we do. Like within most great ape species, and we'll go into this in a bit, like our closest genetic descendants, well, not descendants but relatives, you will see with regional variations which correlate with genetic variations, different ways of structuring their tribal structures. You know, you might have women on top, you might have men on top, you might have larger structures, you might have structures where dominance changes are handled this way versus this way. This appears to be in part cultural and in part genetic. So if we see this in monkeys, you probably see it in humans as well. And I note here that when people are like, oh, how dare you say this horrible thing, you know, that these people are different. I'm like, yeah, but think about how many people you killed by being unwilling to admit this when you tried to force Iraq to be a democracy.
Well, I'm also thinking, I mean, so to be an Arab, it's an ethno-linguistic identity. So I think maybe we're also looking at the magnification of not just genetic heritage, but also a choice to lean into that culture. So you're not just looking at people who may have Arab like tribal roots in their lineage, but also people who have chosen to maintain Arab language and Arab identity, because it's not a racial group. It's not like you check Arab.
Group. Hold on.
It's an ethno-linguistic identity. It is not racial. My point, though, is that would make this effect even stronger, because when you're combining both genetics and opt-in culture, you're looking at something a lot stronger than if you're only looking at culture or genetics in isolation.
Well, so I was actually asking AI this because so it says basically it's both. But yeah, you're right. But so I was looking at AI on this to understand exactly who the Arabs are, right? Like where did they come from and why might they be so different from other groups at a genetic level or an ethno-linguistic level? And the thing to note about Arabs is they were the group, like I wasn't sure if they like joined up with the Muslims early on or the Muhammad, like, you know, basically the desert nomads. And it's like, no, they are the desert nomads. They are the desert nomadic group as it spread out.
I mean, to be Arab, you need common Arabic language, shared cultural features, and historical tribal links, which so absolutely there's a genetic component, like, and that's a big part of it. You know, I don't have tribal links, even if I grew up speaking Arabic. It would be very difficult for me to say that I was an Arab. But yeah, I mean, I still think it's super important to point out that this is people who like it's more than just being, for example, white, because I'm not like leaning into white culture, for example, you know, walking around in Birkenstocks with my socks on or something. I am just, just genetically white. Whereas like if you're Arab, it's because you're like really leaning into your genetic heritage.
So, well, and this genetic heritage is very, very, very unique.
And distinct. Yeah, super distinct. Like it actually is as offensive as it sounds to say it on surface level. I can't be really surprised by this tendency, because if you are choosing to lean into this ethno-linguistic identity that came from tribal cultures, like tribal cultures and democracy aren't exactly compatible.
Well, actually, we're going to talk about this because the question is why do Arabs suck so much at democracy, but clan-based cultures, which have a lot of similarities to tribal-based cultures, don't seem to struggle with democracy as much? Whether it's the Irish or the backwoods people or the Scottish, why don't they have problems with democracy in the way that the Arabs do? If the answer is just tribalism, and note that what we're basically going to find is their form of tribalism is very different than these forms of tribalism. The reason why Arabs are so unique is they had this desert nomadic tribal groups, which you've got to keep in mind how effing weird the genetic pressures on this group were.
Yeah.
Historically speaking, no other group underwent anything like this for as long as
the environmental pressures alone are so unique compared to how other civilizations developed. Arabs include the Bedouins. That's like, what a lifestyle. I mean, I guess there were like Mongolians who lived kind of similar nomadic lifestyles and hostile
the Mongolians are the only group I can think of as having any similarity to this, but essentially it was a very, if it was a species, you would call them an extremophile species.
Totally.
And we've often mentioned this means that they specialize in an extreme condition. That sometimes extremophile extremophile ethnic groups, when they get their act together and eventually interact with non-extremophile ethnic groups, they have developed so uniquely that the non-extremophile ethnic groups just basically get creamed by them. This has happened.
When we think about the way that we want to genetically modify and culturally shape our future descendants, we want to become extremophiles. We are not extremophiles right now. We want to create an extremophile
in the far north,
yeah, in the far, yeah.
But what I mean by this,
come on, the far north is a jumping off point for space, but whatever.
Yeah, if you're like, when has this happened in human history, where an extremophile ethnic or cultural group ended up encountering a non-extremophile ethnic group and was just like, oh shoot, these techniques we've built to live in these incredibly harsh conditions just make you no threat to us at all. Well, it's not just with the Arab explosion, which was huge. Like, Arabs basically conquered, I think, at least half as much as Rome did at the height of their empire, after like Muhammad took like a bunch of warring desert clans and was like, I bet if we stopped warring with each other, we could take over the world. And I think a lot of people would have been like, no, that's crazy. But he did it. But we also
if we could just stop warring, like, imagine if Scottish people got to that point.
Well, no, that's basically what happened with the Vikings. Is they were like, bro, it's so much easier to kill like the mainlanders than it is to kill other Vikings.
Yeah,
like let's just go do that every summer. And so the Vikings did that, and they were basically completely unstoppable for a pretty big period. I think like 100 years or something.
Maybe this is what's happening with the generally conservative coalition that has risen, is because the left has fallen prey to so much internal infighting. They're just like, well, what if we just got along for a little while?
What if we just, no, that is literally like what the pernatalist movement is, like religious extremists and like pro-tech people being like, what if we stopped fighting each other for just a little bit and raided all these juicy farms?
No, that's just too much winning. Too much winning.
But it's not just that. You also, you mentioned the steppe people. This repeatedly happened with them. They lived in incredibly harsh steppe conditions. They would encounter other groups, like as we saw with the various steppe people invasions of both Europe and China, where they would just absolutely, no one could stand against them. So this is something that happened a few times, but one of the times it happened was with the Arabs. And so this was an incredibly unique group. And I think that to treat them like they're like, oh, well, they're near the Persians, so they're kind of like the Persians. It's like, no, they're not. Or they're, adjacent to like Pakistan, so they're kind of like Pakistan.
Yeah, that's acting as though like Scottish clans are like basically the same as English farmers. No.
Yeah, I mean, and culturally, and this is the thing, you don't need to be that genetically distant to be in the ways that genetics interacts with culture, very different.
Yeah, because you have to think about the selective pressures that lead to successful reproduction and passing on of your genetic and cultural heritage in each of these different environments. If you are in a tribe-based culture in a super harsh environment, the things that will make you successful in reproducing and having kids and raising them successfully and having them do that in turn are going to be very different from a more urban civilization-based culture that lives just like 50 miles away. It's obviously going to change outcomes and traits.
So, but there's another big thing at play here.
Okay.
Because I was going through and I was trying to like grok this myself, and I was thinking through everything I know about local geopolitics and everything like that. Why Arabs and Arabs only? Why not other Muslims? What is at play here? What is at play here? Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a major reason why this is the case.
Okay,
So,
why?
Saudi Arabia is a very, 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 very wealthy monarchy. Saudi Arabia is filled with Arabs. And the Saudi Arabian royal family believes, not just for, shits and giggles, but with like real good reason, that their lives and future could be at risk if a democracy ever establishes itself within other Arab countries. Because the Saudi Arabian royal family sees the Arab cultural groups as being essentially their dominion. And since nobody really has the money to push back on them, and then you could be like, well, who might have the money to push back on them? Well, the Qataris or the UAE could have the money to push back on them, but both of those countries are also monarchies. So the more money a country has within the Arab Peninsula, the more like from Dutch disease or from capturing oil, the more stable the monarchy is within that country. So you have this small collection of incredibly stable monarchies within the region, sort of led by Saudi Arabia. No, Saudi Arabia is in conflict with the Qataris a lot, but both of them agree that they don't want non-monarchies establishing themselves in the region. The same with the UAE, because if you are a monarch, I mean, imagine the way the monarchs felt in Europe when they saw the French Revolution happening. Like, we have a lot of letters about this. They were freaked the F out. They were like, bro, this is bad. Like, this could come here. We need to make this look bad. We need to frame this as bad. We need to stop this from happening. So you have a situation where, because you do have among, and for cultural reasons, among the economically most productive areas of the region, stable monarchies that have a vested interest in preventing anything other from a monarchy from existing. So whenever one of the other countries, that because it doesn't have as much Dutch disease, might be able to have a revolution and create something other than a monarchy, attempts at that, it's stamped down by the Saudis and their allies. And so if we're going to go to for specific examples of this, you have Bahrain, 2011, Saudi-led Gulf Corporation Council forces invaded to quash pro-democracy protests, preserving the Sunni monarchy against the Shiite majority uprising. This was framed as countering Iranian influence, but effectively halted democratic movements. Egypt, 2013, Saudi Arabia provided billions of dollars in aid to back the military coup against President Mohammed Morsi, Muslim Brotherhood linked, stabilizing Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's authoritarian rule. Reports describe this as part of a counter-revolutionary strategy to roll back Arab Spring. Yemen, 2015 to present, Saudi military intervention against Houthi rebels, seen as Iranian proxies, has prolonged chaos, preventing stable governance, democratic or otherwise, and ensuring Yemen remains a failed state rather than a potential democratic model. Broader Arab Spring countering. Saudi Arabia funneled funds to autocrats in Jordan, Morocco, and Oman to buy off protesters with subsidies while supporting crackdowns in Syria and Lebanon. Analysts argue that this created a democracy-free zone in the Gulf's orbit, with Saudi petrodollars enabling regimes to weather economic pressures that might otherwise force reforms. And I noted, when I was going over this with the AI, they don't need to focus on non-Arab countries as much because they are not seen as really being similar to them. So Saudi influence is geographically and culturally bound to the Arab sphere, where shared language, history, and institutions, e.g. Arab speaking, amplify its leverage. Iran, as a non-Arab Shiite power, operates as a rival axis, Syria, Hezbollah, etc., resisting Saudi meddling through its own proxies. Saudi-Iranian rivalry has even indirectly bolstered Iran's theocracy by framing reforms as Saudi-backed threats. Non-Arab Muslims, e.g. Turkey and Indonesia, are outside this orbit. Turkey's democracy, albeit flawed, persisted despite Ottoman legacies, and Indonesia's post-1998 transition faced no Saudi interference. Recent X discussions echo this, noting Saudi efforts to prevent democracy in Arab neighbors as a survival tactic. So I will note that it is in part artificial, which is created in part by the Dutch disease of the region and the friendships and power plays of the regions focused around the Saudis that are doing this not as some sort of big conspiracy, but as an existential freak out in the same way that many European monarchs freaked out during the French Revolution.
They're just doing what they have to do. They're just trying to not die.
Playing the in books, the noble power games of nobles, because I read a lot of romance manga these days, are framed always in this sort of underhanded but sort of romanticized way. But the reality is a lot of the power plays of nobles is preventing democracy, and a lot of the power plays of the monarch is preventing the nobles from getting more power, the aristocracy from getting more power. Now, let's go to the question of tribalism, because the tribalism within this region is very unique. While tribalism exists globally, e.g. clans in Somalia or Scotland, it's more pervasive and politically salient in Arab contexts, reshaping everything from family loyalty to state building. This stems from Bedouin nomadic roots where survival depended on kin alliances in harsh deserts, contrasting with more settled and urbanized non-Arab Muslim societies. Islam moderated pre-Islamic tribalism, e.g. emphasizing umam and ashabab something, or group solidarity. But in Arab lands, it fused with it, creating a hybrid structure that prioritized and extended clans over national identity. So in Arab societies, tribes, qabila, are core social units, often tracing patrilineal descent to ancient ancestors, e.g. Quraysh in Saudi Arabia, or Quraysh in Saudi Arabia. Families are extended and hierarchical with loyalty to clan elders overriding state institutions. This fosters patronage, wasta, where jobs, votes, and resources flow through tribal networks, undermining merit-based democracy. In places like Yemen or Libya, tribal federations act as quasi-states vetoing central authority. Ex post highlight this, noting Arabs' pride in patrilineal lineage spanning centuries and larger extended families. Non-Arab Muslims, tribalism is present but diluted or transformed. In Indonesia, kinship is bilateral by both parents' lines matter, with village-based, not nomadic structures emphasizing community harmony over clan rivalry. Pakistan has brotherhoods similar to tribes, but they're more caste-like and integrated into feudal systems, allowing electoral competition. Turkey's Ottoman legacy shifted towards centralized bureaucracy, eroding tribal power. Iran emphasizes Persian nationalism over tribes among Kurds and Balak. Overall, non-Arabs of weaker Asabi, enabling stronger national institutions and civil societies that support democracy. This difference explains why non-Arab Muslims often score higher on social trust metrics per World Values surveys. So note here, Arab Muslims also score very low on social trust. And then when
if you don't have high social, I don't know though, we don't have very high social trust in the US, do we? And we still have.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
The Ottoman context. So the Ottoman had the millet system when they ruled these territories, primarily for religious minorities.
Christians, and we're all about that. Bring back the millet system, people.
Granting them autonomy and personal law and taxation to maintain loyalty without full integration in Arab provinces, e.g. his Iraq. They layered this with tribal pacts, appointing sheiks as intermediaries to collect taxes and provide troops, avoiding direct confrontation with nomadic groups. This system worked because imposing centralized control on tribes often backfired, leading to revolts. It preserved tribal autonomy, which later hindered post-Ottoman nation states. Now, I'll note here, this is what we should have done in Iraq. We should have done a millet system. There are too many competing ethnic and tribal groups within the region that just have no interest in getting along with each other. This extremely tribalist framing also explains why Israel was able to essentially curb stomp dramatically larger, better funded, and more technologically advanced Arab armies.
Because they were a culturally and ethnic unified tribe.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So, and well, they just related to this differently. If you go back to like the 7 Years' War, the Yom Kippur War, many people see Israel and they think of those wars as if Israel today was fighting those wars. You know, the technological and economic powerhouse that Israel is
Oh
today.
yeah, but it was not. Yeah.
It was not that. It had worse equipment than the forces that were up against it. They were dramatically larger than Israel. They all attacked surprise on a holiday, nonetheless, just to really f with them. They really should have lost. I think that like in some battles they were outnumbered like 100-1, and they still won. And the large reason why people factor this in is extreme tribalism among the attacking groups. They saw the other groups that were attacking alongside them, even from within their culture, as being as different from themselves as the Israelis were in many cases. And more than that, within this tribal Arab structure, the secondary thing is huge amounts of class divide. The generals would not have seen the forces serving under them as fully human often.
No.
They were just numbers. They're just like, you attack and I tell you what to do. And this is an aristocratic, we have aristocratic Muslim friends. Okay. I have aristocratic Arab Muslim friends. The way that they see the poor who live under them, I'm not even saying it's with animosity or anything like that. They're a different type of human than them. It's a society and social structure that is much more comfortable with true aristocracy than Jewish culture is. The Jewish generals would have seen the people fighting under them not as numbers, but as, mothers and fathers and brothers and people that they prayed alongside and everything like that, where you wouldn't have had the same relationship between the higher ups. And I know this sounds bad, but it's just the way Arab society is structured, and it has been since the time of Muhammad. It is much more hierarchical, much higher power distance. Some societies are just way higher power distance than other societies. And within these societies, it's not even seen as like a bad thing. Like, if you're from a low power distance society, you get mad that anyone would ever see themselves as that degree of above you, because that's what being in a low power distance society is about.
Yeah.
If you are in a high power distance society, this stuff can seem bizarre to you. So, for example, Peru, where we operate our company, the fairly high power distance society, and we had a problem where when we were trying to replace one of the managers, we had an entire team say that they would quit rather than take a promotion. That wouldn't happen in the United States. It just wouldn't. Somebody's going to take that promotion. And it wasn't like they were mad or protesting the person being fired. Everyone thought the person had done a bad job.
It was more like they were like, I don't want that level of, like, the way that they saw being at that higher level was that they would be blamed for more things going wrong and they would have to do more work. So they were like, screw that. I don't want that. Even if it meant, higher pay, more control.
It's very much like, I'm lower caste and I'm happy about being lower caste. Why would I want all the problems of the nobility? They have to manage so much.
I'm so glad I'm not an alpha. Yeah, it was terrible. It was, and that it's not even it's not the craziest high power distance society. So even we couldn't even deal with that. Although we've gone also to even lower power distance societies and been kind of creeped out by them. And how
I'm like, don't you know I'm better than you? Like
the law of Yonta, like all that.
Oh yeah, I get creeped out by like stando societies. They do not. They to me feel like a communist. It's like, can't you just admit that some people are like better at things than other people? Like, they have this rule in the law of Yonta: the tall wet grass gets cut. Don't grow higher than the other grass. That's a huge negative thing within this cultural group, and I find that to be really gross and like antagonistic to.
Well, and it just like it stops people from pursuing exceptionalism and doing really amazing things, which annoys me because I want people to be exceptional in whatever ways they can uniquely be exceptional.
Yeah. So what we're noting here is we're also not like extremely low power distance people either.
Yeah.
But that's a part of this level of
I think
tribalism.
this is all to say, though, that tolerance for power distance probably has some intuitive genetic component to it as well. That, like, we on a very intuitive level seem to want to like vomit in the face of both higher and lower power distance.
Yeah, yeah. There's probably a genetic component to this as well. Like we're
Yeah.
just like, ugh.
Yeah, and that there seem to be very intuitive and instinctual responses to different forms of governance as well. That for some people, it's just like, this is not
And
for
at different
me.
levels of technology, power distances can provide different advantages for different groups. It appears that these days, economically, low power distance, or at least medium power distance, is the most optimal, and high power distance is very bad for economic development. But this is neither here nor let's continue with how. In other ways, their tribal system is different. Patrilineal lineage tracing, many Arabs recite their ancestry back 10 generations plus, often to pre-Islamic figures and even biblical ones like Adam. An anecdote from Iraq, a man claimed his family had used tribal records kept by sheiks or oral traditions to trace back to Adam via Abraham, emphasizing tribal purity and status. My family has one of those, by the way, tracing back to Adam. When the family member said it.
Oh
All you need to do is trace to a biblical figure, and then it's very easy to trace back. Just so people know, you don't go all the way back to Adam. You just go to like Charlemagne, which I'm descended from, and then from Charlemagne, because all these famous figures have. And if you trace back, because it
was just Charlemagne ... Adam. Is that what you're saying?
By the way, ancestor I have in common with Elon Musk.
Charlemagne,
descended from Charlemagne. Yeah, I have a bunch of more recent famous ancestors, but some cultures care a lot about ancestry, and clan cultures care a lot about it, and tribal cultures care a lot about it. So this is something I share with them. Note here that this pride it's not just pride, it's also functional. Lineage determined marriage, heritability, inheritance, and alliances. In contrast to nuclear families elsewhere, Arab extended families, Alahi, include uncles, cousins, and in-laws as core decision makers, with elders holding veto power. Cousin marriages, bint am. These are the preferred marriage to a father's brother's daughter is common, up to 50% in some regions, reinforcing tribal bonds and keeping wealth internal. Anecdote, in Bedouin communities, groom's tribe displays power at weddings by firing guns in the air, signaling protection for the bride as she joins a new tribe. Oh, that's a sweet tradition. I guess that would come from another clan-based culture, being like, oh, yeah, we're the signaling that will protect you. But from what? The other tribes in the region. Because again, they are descended from regions where there was constant tribal conflict. Tribal protection, Ikawani, Brotherhood. Non-kin can be adopted via Ikawa, granting full tribal rights. Anecdote from Yemen, a man sought refuge with Sheikh Jabur Jin Gabal, becoming his quote-unquote brother. After the Sikh's death, the man's plea at the grave, "You gave me brotherhood, now your sons forsake me," prompted the sons to honor it poetically. Quote, "My father heard you from the grave and bids us to protect you even in hell." Sorry, even to hell. I guess you wouldn't say his father in hell, even to hell. This illustrates Ashabi, unbreakable loyalty beyond blood. Now, what I actually noted is at first I was like, yeah, but if this is the case, then why do clan-based structures, like if tribalism was a huge factor here, why do clan-based structures like the Scot or the Irish or the backwoods American, my cultural...
The
Scots.
Oh, the Scots. I thought that you were like trying to imply that the music genre was like some kind of ethnic group. And I was like, Scots, is this a thing, please?
The Irish and the backwoods people, again, like the redneck Greater Appalachian cultural group that I'm from and Simone's from, these are all clan-based cultural groups where you really focus on the clan. You don't have extended networks of friends. You are like, this is what matters. It is my clan that matters. And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, oh, actually, they adopted democracy kind of late compared to other people within their regions. Ireland really only adopted democracy because they were conquered by Britain. And then they kept the democracy after the revolution, but they were pretty effing late to democracy. Scotland was earlier to democracy, but Scottish democracy was really quite defensive against the English structure. They were like, how can we get the maximum number of clans on board with what we're doing? And if you look at the backwood cultures, even as they lived alongside like American democracy, they often would have alternate democratic structures locally that were in competition with the American democratic structures. So the regulators are a good example of this. They form their own police forces and local government.
I'm checking to see if Appalachian cultures in the US have lower rates of voting.
Oh, that'd be interesting. But basically, the difference between these two groups has to do with how they relate to larger hierarchy. The Scottish group and the Greater Appalachian group. What did you learn, Simone? You just did a I learned something face.
They
What
do
is
have lower rates of voting. In the 2012 presidential election, only 55% of the voting age population in Appalachia cast ballots compared to 60.5% nationally.
Mm,
They do.
makes sense.
And across multiple studies. Yeah. Whoa. Yeah. Young voter participation can be even lower.
Mm.
Yeah, that very interesting. Okay. Yeah. So maybe
So
there's just something that
so
like if you have clan-based roots, maybe you're a little less into democracy in general, whether
well,
you're
actually,
an Arab or not.
hold on, because they have within every one of these regions created very stable democratic systems eventually.
Hmm.
And so the question is why in these regions was particularly Scottish and the greater Appalachian backwoods cultural tradition, both are related to each other. Like they're basically Scottish descendants. They're called Scotch Irish, but that was because they were the Scottish
Scots
who went to
Irish.
Irish to conquer the Irish, but they're still Scottish. So it's confusing there, but it's a
In Albion Seed, David Hackett Fisher often refers to them as borderland cultures rather than Scots Irish, since it's kind of not, yeah, it's not the best descriptive
it's not the best
wording.
descriptive. But anyway, the point being is both of these groups are technically the same, and they actually seem to take to democracy pretty quickly. And so the question is why did they take to democracy quickly? And the answer comes from looking at the motivations on the ground level as they decided to either fight in revolutions for democracy or as they decided to form the initial like Presbyterian communities, which are really sort of proto-religious democracies, as opposed to the more authoritarian Catholic or Anglican structure, which comes to is basically closer to a monarchistic way of organizing a church. And the answer is because they have an intense hatred of authority, which is not seen in the Muslim countries, in the Muslim version of tribalism. Was in these clan-based structures, it was the clan is first, and anything that tries to mess with the clan or touch the clan or interfere with the clan's autonomy is something that you need to fight against. And so if democracy looked like the form of government that would mess with them the least or impose the least external impositions on them, they're going to fight for it. Basically, small government extremists. Whereas in the early days, at least, whereas in the Islamic countries, it's quite different. The loyalty to tribe is also loyalty to tribal alliances and a tribal alliance network, which fundamentally undermines the democratic state because it
Yeah.
acts as an alternate to the democratic
Yeah,
state.
it undermines it. Yeah, 100%.
Worse, it's really bad when you combine it with Islam because if you're in the backwoods cultural tradition and somebody comes and they say you need to live this way or that way, I'd be like, on whose effing authority?
Yeah,
Um,
seriously. Yeah.
and they'd be like, oh well, on these rich coastal elitist authority. I'm like, I'm sorry, no. But if you go to the tribal groups in Muslim regions, they say on whose authority, and it's this theocratic leader, this Muslim leader, and they're like, oh, of course.
Mm.
And these Muslim leadership communities, and you're like, well, what about like the Scottish region and stuff like that? Like, why didn't that fall to this? And this is what the Presbyterians were, the Presbyter system, right? They'd say, like, on whose authority? And they'd be like, well, this Anglican bishop, right? Or this Catholic bishop. And they'd be like, well, who the F appointed him? And they'd be like, well, some rich guy in Rome. And they're like, well, I don't care about him. We should be voting on this, or they'd say the king in England. And they'd be like, what the heck does he have to do with God? We should be making this more local, sort of ground up. And so I think that this fundamental difference between the two cultural groups is why democracy works within these types of clan-based structures, while more slowly than under the more feudal English structure.
Mm.
And i.e., in the English structure, when you go to these early periods, you would have a loyalty to your like region's sort of lord over family or local clan, whereas in the Irish, Scottish, and backwoods areas it was clan over lord. But within the Muslim areas it is tribal network over basically everything else, because the way that you advance your clan is through the tribal network. And then in addition to that, it's don't disappoint, your local religious leaders who sort of manage the tribal network of alliances and tell you, when they're telling you what to do, they tell you, well, this is why, this is what you do.
Right. Yeah, all this is getting me to think about how, I mean, first I saw this in a very limited capacity, how context really, really matters when it comes to governing formats. Like communism works really, really well on a very small community or family level. Like our
Yeah.
family is communist, and all of our chickens have communist names. And it makes sense and it works perfectly. Communism 100% works and has been tried and is tried every single day on the family level for millions and millions and millions.
Yeah, I mean, my kids don't work, and I give them a portion of my income, from to each according to their needs, from each according to their ability.
Exactly. But now I'm thinking that this podcast, this conversation has got me thinking about how maybe also democracy really only thrives in certain contexts, and we need to just be aware of that like communism isn't inherently bad, you just need to apply it correctly. Democracy isn't inherently good or bad, you just need to apply it correctly.
Well,
And very clearly in many,
it doesn't work for everyone. And
yeah,
if you attempt to apply it to a group that is not adapted for it,
yeah,
you're gonna have math deaths. How
yeah.
many
So
people
our
died because of the
statecraft in some countries where clearly democracy just wasn't meant to work was doomed to fail from the beginning, just like communism on a super large scale in like Russia or in this
No, but
US.
I think that communism can work on at least a small scale within some communities.
Absolutely.
And we saw this within
And with certain levels of technology and post scarcity singularity
potentially, but here we're talking about
the real world.
What's the communist small communes they had in Israel?
Kibbutzim. Yeah. Kibbutzim, not it.
But you can't scale it up bigger than that, and it's not going to work for every ethnic group. And this is also true of the millet system. The millet system may not work for every ethnic group, but it 100%. Doesn't work for Arab groups.
That was more of a Persian thing.
Arabs right, it was when the Persians ruled the Arabs, and it was how they ruled the Arabs.
Okay. Okay.
And if you're talking about, no, people of one species couldn't have multiple ways of genetically structuring their society. And then here we're going to get to chimpanzees. So we're going to go to evidence remains. Okay. So chimpanzees groups in African regions exhibit distinct social behaviors. For example, West African chimps are more cooperative in hunting and tool use, not cracking with stones, while East African groups show more aggressive patrolling and infanticide.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, and then bonobos, often called peaceful compared to chimps, warlike structures, have matriarchal groups with high social tolerance, but this varies regionally, e.g., more alliances in the Congo Basin groups. Genetic studies show minimum fixed. So, and then overall, ape cultures, including social structures, evolve through a second inheritance system of social learning, which functions alongside the DNA and sort of reinforces how small genetic differences can create quite big behavior differences in terms of how you're socially structuring a community. And I think it can lead to a huge amount of, if you look at the number of deaths and dollars spent trying to stabilize an Iraqi democracy, when I think it was fundamentally impossible to begin with.
Yeah.
You see the horror that comes downstream of not just accepting that some people are different from you.
Yeah, it's like giving a medical treatment to someone who won't tolerate it.
Right. It's like saying it would be racist to say that Black people have different bodies than white people. It's like, well, actually, this is something you really need to pay attention to when you're doing like treatments of diabetes or pregnancy, because they
or just women in med. That's a really famous example.
Example
that even car seats have just like crash tests and whatnot not really been tested on women. Like women are kind of
really a big deal. Yeah, because they're just like, it's tested on somebody. But
like they haven't really been tested on male bodies and on female bodies. Like even the first female crash test dummy didn't emerge until forever ago, and still car seats are 100% optimized around male bodies. So women are kind of screwed in car accidents. Men are more likely to get into car accidents. So I'm okay with the design being what it is. But there actually is, Ride Safer, the company that we got those kid harness car seats for $4. They also sell a special car seat harness that you can use to replace male designed car seats, especially as a pregnant woman, because pregnant women are kind of screwed in car accidents too if they're not wearing the right car seat.
Well, so, but this could really screw. I find the male-female difference because broadly
But
in
like, I think
society,
different. No, obviously, and like,
we
I
know
mean,
we're
we're
allowed to
really big
talk
on
about.
polygenic scores, and a really big problem with most of the polygenic scores out there is like, okay, maybe this makes sense if you're of especially English or European descent, but if you're African, if you're East Asian, like, you can't really use this the same way that we
I think
can.
that's not a very good analogy because
No.
you're just talking about where this stuff has been collected. And the point I'm talking about is the denial that we are different leads to really bad outcomes, often for minority communities.
Oh yeah.
So a much stronger example of this can be just saying black and white bodies are not different. Well, this causes a huge problem when black women, and this is a big problem in the pronatalist movement, learn that I think it's literally double. Like black fertility problems are literally double white fertility problems.
Yeah, I
Um,
think we did a podcast on this, or we talked about it at one point, and it was shocking.
it's shockingly high, or maybe 50% higher or something, but it's really, really bad.
It's
Um, and,
notable. It's
and if
something
you
that
don't
everyone should know about.
tell black women, hey, you need to prep for this,
Mhm.
you can lead to really screw over them culturally speaking. The other really big one was black people that is super offensive to mention, and I'll explain why it's offensive to mention in just a second, is black people have shorter child gestation cycles. It's about a week shorter for a black child to be born than a white child. And you can be like, oh, I don't understand where this could cause problems. It causes a very big problem in interracial marriages because when you have black fathers and white mothers, you get no impact from this because the mother's body just carries the baby extra long and that's good. But when you have white fathers and black mothers, there was an interesting study on this, very, obviously spicy, that showed that the mother's body doesn't know it's carrying a baby that's supposed to
Just
gestate.
ejects a baby that's not quite ready
So
for
it gives the
showtime.
baby that's a week premature when it's born. And you can see this in the statistics of these children's development. Like they are developmentally impacted by this as if they had been born a week early.
And
Uh,
we can attest from personal anecdotal experience that having kids born premature
yeah,
has
we had a kid who
knock-on
was
effects
born
for years.
Yeah, we had a kid who was born premature, and he's still like in the bottom 1% of weight and height for his age,
Yeah,
which is
he's the same size, and he wears the same clothes and shoes as his younger sister, who is 18 months younger than him. So yeah.
yeah. So again, this isn't like us being like, this is something intrinsically bad about black people or interracial
It's
relationships.
just a good heads up thing. I mean, it would
Yeah,
be
like
helpful to know.
be
Like, especially,
aware.
if you know that you're gonna have a kid that's more likely to be born premature, you can plan certain things that can help to ameliorate the effects of premature birth. It's meaningful.
Right. Yeah. And if we are different in some ways, be aware of how we're different.
Mm.
And be willing to, I think within yourself, and this is always one of the big themes of our podcast, to look within yourself when somebody's saying, this is the way that we do things, and be like, but will this actually, because a lot of people are like multi-ethnic, right? And they're like, well, how do I know what my, unique biology wants? And I'm like, well, try to ignore what society tells you and ask yourself, like, are friends actually an important part of your life? Do you actually need that? Do you actually, I mean, like I'm just talking about like the ways that we're weird, right? Like, I don't need to look at my ancestors and see that all of their friends were clan based or family friends to know that I really don't get that much from social interactions,
Hmm.
even though I'm told I'm supposed friendship is magic and all
It's
that.
not even that you don't get that much. It's that it actively
It's
stresses us
painful.
out. We have to recover after.
Yes. I don't. I'm. My wife is my battery. It's only being around her. They talk about like introverts and extroverts. It's only being around the clan that I recharge. It's the same. Or what else? Like sleeping in different rooms, right? Like I don't need to know whether my ancestors slept in different rooms. I know it seems effing insane for a husband and wife to sleep in the same room. Like,
I mean, to be fair though, that one's a little weird because I mean, in the past, everyone kind of piled up on one bed. Like everyone would be on this bed over here. every night.
That's not true for different groups. In a lot of rural groups, that's true for urban populations, like a lot of Catholic and Irish populations, that was common. For rural populations, because land was basically free and all you needed to do
Yeah,
was
he sure wasn't though, Malcolm. Come on, I watch a lot more like
no.
history, lifestyle stuff than you do.
If you spent a day just building an extra room, you had an extra room. If you look at the size, Simone, no, seriously, have you ever looked at the size of the houses that people used to live in back then?
No, I mean, I know. So, like the colonial houses, and this is talked about in Albion Seed when he talks about the folk ways of architecture that differed across cultures. Absolutely, like Puritan culture had kids in separate rooms, and when it was possible, yeah,
Yeah, I'll ask
together.
AI. You know what? I'll ask AI right now.
Oh yeah, you really want to win this one, don't you?
Oh yeah, I want you to have to.
Is this because you lost the ethno-linguistic group
Oh, we'll
thing?
see. We'll see.
Oh, I miss when we did bets. I don't think I ever took the money from you though when I won the bets. To be fair. Did you know, by the way, I was just thinking about differences between animals in different geographic areas, that birds have different accents?
Yes, I knew birds had different accents. You didn't know birds had different accents?
I knew it only in adulthood. I didn't know it as a kid. And I think it's so
Oh,
cool.
you got this right. They were
Of
more
course I
often
did.
single room structures, especially in
Yeah.
the early stages of
No,
settlement.
even when they were multi-room structures, though, the family would still sleep often in the same area because that's the place where it would be warm at night.
Yeah, it had to do with heating. Yeah.
You're welcome. Oh, if only we were still betting, because I would have just made $20, but no. You just stopped doing that. Even after a bunch of times I was wrong.
You're never wrong, Simone. You're the perfect wife.
That's what the perfect husband says.
But I see this is what I'm talking about here. You don't need to look at your ancestral heritage. You can know what works for you.
Yeah.
Because there are always going to be deviations
Just do what's
in
right.
ancestral heritage where you're
Yeah,
going to be
just
like,
do what's right. But also, like, I don't think that families piled into one, they didn't all sleep in the kitchen together because they wanted to. They did it because they didn't have a choice. So yeah, I'm not super concerned about that being an inherited trait. I think our people's tendency to keep moving out to frontiers, away from cities, away from density of people, is a larger indication of why we would enjoy separate bedrooms when given the opportunity and luxury, which it remains, even in our time, a huge luxury that we use separate bedrooms. So,
mhm. Hell, all right. Have a great day, Simone. And I was gonna start another episode. What are we doing for dinner tonight? Just I guess reheating something or
Yeah, so we have a couple options. I can make sourdough that's not whole wheat for you, because I mean that would be offensive to you. And you can have that with jam or like dip it in curries, or we can just do a mystery curry with rice this time.
you know what? I'm gonna do your sourdough with cheese again. And then
No, I don't have flatbread. That would have to be another night. I mean
well,
like
no.
baked sourdough.
Yeah, you can't cut it and then bake it with cheese.
Oh, you just want like a slice of sourdough with cheese on top. Like what's that? A Welsh rarebit, basically?
I guess. Like
Like
wouldn't that
an open-faced cheese sandwich on chunky sourdough bread.
yeah. But
Okay.
not chunky. I mean, cut it thinner. You cut it obscenely thick, which I think is causing me to become upset at my stomach. Like
Well, I
you
mean, don't you wanna do like one of your curries or something? Or do you want
well,
pot
okay, then
stickers?
let's do a curry and rice.
Okay. Curry and rice. We will see what curry surprise you get tonight. There's so much to go through. Like, we have to do freezer farming for a long time because
Yeah.
I think I just make batches that are too big and then we haven't been disciplined about using them. So thank you for.
Because they got better over time. So I'm typically dealing with like
You're like, I
less.
don't want to do that. Yeah. Well,
Wait,
I'll
but
do a mix.
throw in some pineapple.
If there isn't any already, yeah. Okay, I'll
Yeah.
throw in. To any? So it's a booster to any curry for you? What if it's a non-pineapple friendly curry?
All curry is pineapple friendly.
Really? Okay. You're strange. But you did proceed to put jam on the cheesy flatbread last night, which was weird
It
to
was
me.
really good. Don't you know?
I mean, power to the people, Okay, I will proceed with this. And I love you very much.
I love you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Mrs. Right. You got things right.
You opened my mind to a whole new thing. Now I'm going to look at democracy the same way I look at communism, like legit. I think that this is a really helpful way to look at governing, and that you can't just look at it in the format of like, is this a structurally sound thing? You have to look at the substrate to which you're applying it, and are these compatible? It's like blood types. Yeah. So anyway, thanks. That was really enlightening. Super interesting. I'm going to be thinking about it for a long time. I love you. I was watching an old commentary on an old Mormon movies. One of them was from the 60s, and it just stood out to me how weird 1960s woman accent was, or like late
I can't model it.
I'll try to find a clip I can give to you. It occurred to me how weird it is. There are time-based accents.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And I realized that if we went back in time, it wouldn't just be our colloquial English that would be difficult for people to understand, but merely our tonality. They would find it really off-putting and weird. And I wonder if women in the Renaissance era or in the Middle Ages had really different tonalities. Like the 1970s, late 1960s female voice was very childish and high and weird. And I wonder if both men and women in the past had really different ways of.
I think like if you go back, even if we went back to like the 20s or 30s, I think everyone would immediately be shocked and be like, why are you doing the radio presenter voice? From like, they had that, that very weird accent.
A transatlantic accent? That was mostly just people in the media profession, not mainstream people.
Well, people had more differences in their accents back then.
Oh, no, for sure. Yeah, where you lived would really dictate how you sounded. 100%. Which is cool. I feel really bad that we're losing accents. Although then there's all these people discussing, and you can totally hear it, especially since we're listening to our kids watch YouTube in the evenings when we bribe them with screens so they eat food. There is definitely a TikTok accent and a YouTuber accent.
Oh, interesting.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Come on, you know it. I can't.
Do you have the YouTuber accent? Well, I mean, we're
No. I'm talking like, clip farmer, view farmer.
But are you saying that they're different, the two accents?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and there are different accents for women and men, very similar to how like Japanese, when spoken by a woman or a man, sounds very different. So yeah, maybe we're not doomed. We're just going to see more subculture based accents and fewer geographically based accents. We'll see.
I am looking this up. TikTok versus YouTube accents.
I can't believe, come on, this must have stood out to you. It's such a thing. They all sound the same. And they start aping each other.
Watch the fingers. Oh, no. Oh, what's happening here? Are you beating in the box? Am I closing you in? No. What is this? What's that? Oh! Are you boxed in? Are you a package now? No. Oh. Oh. Ha. Oh my gosh. Boom. Yeah. Mwah.